Dear friends, we've had some really interesting developments where the Russian President Vladimir Putin is saying that he is open for peace talks with Ukraine, and he has suggested that countries like India, Brazil, and China could be potential mediators. Now, this statement comes very close on the heels of the Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Modi's visit to Kiev. Just a couple of weeks ago, he was there. And then before that, he was in Moscow. And also, till about a couple of weeks ago, President Putin had ruled out any peace talks after incursions by Ukraine in Russian territory. So we are here to discuss these interesting developments. And is there a correlation? I mean, is Prime Minister Modi on the verge of negotiating a peace deal between Moscow and Ukraine? So let's get on to this. And joining us to speak about this very interesting development is eminent Indian journalist Mukesh Kaushik, who is also the deputy editor of Dainik Bhaskar. And we also have Sagina Walyat with us, who is an international relations analyst and commentator. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you for having
me.
Thank you. Yeah. Mr. Kaushik, let's start with you. How do you see these developments? You've been covering international relations for so many years. If you look at just purely the optics, Prime Minister Modi goes to Moscow, then he goes to Kiev, and then we have this statement coming in, all of this within the last 2 months. So are we reading too much here, or there is more here than meets the eye?
Look, Pallavi, I think it started from July onwards, and there are a series of events which can correlate this development. In July, Prime Minister chose his first destination after becoming Prime Minister third time. His first visit was standalone visit was to Moscow. And this visit was not taken very lightly by Western countries, US, and they criticized Prime Minister Modi. But since then onwards, India has positioned itself as a very neutral country. Though we have not been very, very neutral, in a way we have been, of course, funding this war by importing oil from Russia. We all along withstood pressure from US that we should not buy S-400, and we gone ahead with that. So, and we never, criticize or condemn war as such, which was envisioned by Russia on Ukraine. So India has all along been leaning a little bit towards Russia, but having a strong relationship with G7 also, G20. India hosted when G20 meeting in New Delhi. There was a very toned down proposal on part of India, and Russia and other countries accepted that. All the condemnation words were gone from that proposal, which was passed in Indonesia. So in a way, India is acceptable to Putin because we have been siding with Putin. And after smelling a likely victory of Donald Trump, he is, trying to resolve this issue before November, I think. Now, in September, Prime Minister Modi is likely to visit, at the end of September, he's likely to visit US on the occasion of UN conventions. And then he would be meeting top officials of US. And then in October, there would be a BRICS summit in 22nd or 23rd of August in Kazan. So I strongly feel that August or October would be a month when we will see at least a coming of ceasefire in Ukraine-Russia border.
Now that's a very, very bold statement and a very bold prediction, Mr. Kaushik. And if it actually happens, it will be very good for the world. Ms. Walyat, how do you see these developments? Do you think that the Indian Prime Minister has had a role to play here, or as Mr. Kaushik is suggesting, that probably this is more coming from Putin's end because he's sensing that there could be, Trump could come, back as president in the US, and perhaps he wants to, show that he's ended the war, or something to that effect. How do you see these developments?
So my view is little different from our honorable guest. I see this, if I talk about India, So India has very categorically, Prime Minister Modi has, made a claim that solution cannot be found on battlefield, right? And we are on the side of peace. We are not neutral. So these diplomatic languages does matter. You are sitting with the Putin, and you are straightforwardly, saying on his face that this and condemning the acts what has happened during his visit to Russia in the attack on children hospital. So it takes, it is the kind of mature diplomacy that Prime Minister Modi was trying to do there, and he was also making his intention very clear that world, not just India, it's not just about serving their national interest. Peace is important for global interest. We are serving their global interest. We need peace, right, in this region. And now we are marking 2 years and 6 months roughly to this war that has started, right? So and why, the choice, I would say, the Russia has actually, created, like China, naming China, India, and Brazil. This is actually more interesting, while figuring out what could happen later on, right? So from the perspective of Russia, I would say, so because these countries are part of, key partners of BRICS, right? Key foundational member of BRICS, and RIC also, Russia, India, and China. So it's a strategic, formation of grouping also, right? So in that way, I see among all, like China and Brazil has their own peace plans.
I think we've lost Sagina there. We'll just get her back, I think, just a
So
second.
few months
Uh,
back, they proposed their plan, and they are also, calling the global South countries also to join this and endorse it. They have now South Africa and Indonesia along with them to talk and endorse about peace plan. But the point is, everybody is coming with a peace plan and their own peace plan. The Ukraine has its own peace plan. They are not involving Russia, right? And on the other side, if Russia is talking through their partners, if they're talking about it, then they have their own peace plan. Nobody is, putting that effort to bring both the parties at one table and then talk about peace, which is the ideal way, right? So India has taken a different approach. It doesn't offer any kind of peace plan. It talks about the peace talks. It talks about the diplomacy. It talks about the dialogues. It endorses such kind of the realistic point of view of if you want a ceasefire on the battleground. So in that way, the choice it has made, and also there's one additional factor I would like to add here is Russia. What believes that among these, China and Brazil, right, they are nudging Russia as well. Closed doors, that you need to now take some stand and you need to now resolve your issues. And India, on a different point of view, it has through back channel diplomacy also, and through openly publicly also, it has condemned Russia so far, even though not very categorically clearly, very vehemently, but where it was needed, it has made its stance very strong, that and condemn the action of Russia. So the nudging part, what Russia is now facing from its partner, if we say, right, like in the language of West, and I think it is in the interest of China also, because China is also not now getting suffered from the West pressure and West sanctions also, and to, if we, the other way point of view is enhancing their own soft power in the world, that they are the global peacemaker. For India, this position is quite very straightforward. India talks about that, right, we would love to play our role as a peace mediator if both the parties wants us to do that. So India position is very different from the rest of the countries whosoever trying to endorse the peace talks or the peace plans. Yeah, for now, I would like to say this. Yeah.
Yeah. And now, Ms. Walyat has made a very interesting point, Mr. Kaushik, that India's position is slightly different from other countries in the sense that India is not trying to impose a peace plan on either parties, and it's trying to get both parties to the table. And if we actually look at geopolitics, then realistically speaking, actually India probably is in the best position to get something like this done, because India has close ties with Russia as well as close ties with the West. It's probably like obviously China is having its own issues with West and things like that. So I think that overall India is in a situation where it can potentially play peacemaker. So how do you what would be your comments on that? That irrespective of the optics, India actually, given its strategic position and its principles of strategic autonomy, it's actually in the best position to get something done, and maybe Putin is counting on that, and so is America.
I see it in two different perspectives. One, years ago we were called a non-aligned country. Now we are multi-aligned country.
Okay.
We have friendship in US, we have friends in Russia, we are having friendship with Israel, and then also with Palestinians. So India is a differently placed country now. Instead of we being non-aligned, we are multi-aligned country. Secondly, this war will stop when, as and when Russia will, because this invasion was started by Putin, and he has to stop this. Nobody else. But in November, when Donald Trump, if he comes to power, he would not be funding this war. It means Russia, this war will end itself, and the credit will go to Trump. Putin does not want this. He thinks that Western democracies should have a different pillar of power now. So after this war stops, if and when India's arbitration works, then there would be a great, great, rebalancing of power in the world, when Western democracies would not be as powerful as they were. Putin will emerge stronger because India would be negotiating a peace deal, and Modi and India will become the guarantee of that peace. That Putin will accept whatever peace deal is happening. So that way, India, as a leader of global South, will emerge as a third pillar in the world.
Very interesting observation, Mr. Kaushik. Also, Sagina, I want to ask this: that there seems to be, as Mr. Kaushik is referring to this fact that Mr. Trump may actually come back to power, and perhaps this is also a factor that Mr. Putin is taking into consideration. But just a couple of weeks ago, his tone was very different when there were incursions in the Kursk region in Russia. He was saying that there cannot be any peace deal and things like that. What is your assessment? That is it that, as Mr. Kaushik is saying, that perhaps the polls are indicating that it's a very tough fight, and if Mr. Trump comes back to power, the war is likely to end on its own? Or is there something more here that is happening behind the scenes that that could potentially have something to do with India's diplomacy?
So from the Trump election point of view, I agree with Sar's prediction, right? So there are chances he'll back. So there are chances that he will not fund the war for multiple reasons, right? For their national interest, and for, we all know, right, for what reasons, like, supporting Putin, because Trump, main target is China, not Russia. So we should not forget that. So yeah, and but if I see the outcome, I would say if Trump comes, it will be in favor of Russia, because now Russia will be at a stronger head to talk, to gain more out of this war, right? And it will be Ukraine that will be losing its stakes. So I believe it's in the favor of Russia if Trump's comes up. And from the point of view of India, I would say whosoever does this thing, peace talk, and whosoever matured this peace talk, definitely it's going to be a huge achievement for that country. But, talking about it, like you very categorically mentioned that few weeks back, Putin statement was there is no way for peace talk right now. So it's a very critical situation, because the timing does matter, right? Timing then, because there was an escalation. Timing now also, because the dynamics has completely changed, right? Ukraine has advanced to Russian category, right? To from three, and it is continuously being advancing in that region, approximately now 300 square feet. Russia also, and in fact from Russian side they are very sure that they are going to capture that region, who is very critical for the supply of supply of Ukraine army. So things are more in on the side of Russia. So it's very difficult to now talk about the outcome here, like who is going to have a more edge on that. My personal point of view is, I believe that Russia, if even the recent statement that Putin has made, he talked about the Istanbul treaty, right? Sorry, Istanbul agreement. So we need to consider what he wants to have, before talking about the peace, what he wants to have on the table before sitting with the Ukrainian counterpart. So that agreement talks about four things, the Crimea issue, and then army, uh, the army negotiation strength on the borders of Russia, that Russia should not feel threatened out of on the borders, Ukraine army settlement there, and then the autonomous declared the autonomous region, the Donetsk and the Luhansk. And then the fourth condition was to not join NATO or that kind of same similar security groups in the EU or with the West. So if Ukraine, and if when we talk about when we talk Ukraine, it means West. Ukraine plus West both will decide the future of this war. So it will be very immature to see that it's Russia versus Ukraine. It's West versus Ukraine. So West will be sitting on the table. So would West agree to that? Because if we go back to Istanbul agreement, the timing was very critical again, and that was very favoring, because it happened within the I think in just 1 week of the war, when Russia invaded Ukraine. So after that, within 2 days after the Istanbul agreement, after 2 days, Ukraine breached this peace agreement. And but how? In fact, in this, in his conversation, Putin also categorically mentioned, and that time also it was becoming very clear that the role of Boris Johnson was very clear there. He made 4 to 5 visits precisely in the Ukraine within 3 to 4 months. So the role of West, UK, is very important to what actually they want. In fact, now also after this Putin's statement, officially asking India and officially making India, China, and Brazil mediator. So the Washington itself made a statement that the terms should be clear, what Ukraine would feel better for them. So that now there is a tough stance between both the parties. Okay, parties are settling here. India can bring their back channel diplomacy and then set a table for them along with China and Brazil and Indonesia. But the point is, will all be able to bring that actual peace on points? So that's the challenge, and it's not just about India or China, whosoever does that. It's the criticality, and I believe Russia also knows that if I go with this Istanbul agreement, right, and Ukraine, for now it's saying that if I have captured that critical part of Russia, so that is my plan of victory plan, I can now better negotiate. I don't think that way, that because Russia has major region of Ukraine in its hand, and if Russia doesn't go back from those regions, which categorically now we can see from, because the four region what Russia has captured from the Ukraine territory is now officially part of Russian constitution. So I don't think Russia will now change its constitution for the sake of this peace. So largely I believe it's just a extended exercise. Okay, I am at a good pace, I want peace, but the other party is not getting on that terms. So it's a delaying tactic for me, what I say largely. Yeah.
All right. So just final comments. Mr. Kaushik, I think what Ms. Walyat is trying to say is that perhaps Putin is just making these statements because he finds himself in a slightly stronger position because they've captured quite a bit of Ukrainian territory. However, you are suggesting that there could be a serious, there is a potential for a ceasefire. I mean, if the polls continue to show that Mr. Trump is actually going to come, you reckon that there's a very serious chance of a ceasefire happening because Mr. Putin would not want Mr. Trump to take credit for ending the war, which you reckon it would in a sense automatically end because he's not going to keep funding the war. And as Ms. Walyat says, that this is basically a war between Russia and the West and not just Russia and Ukraine.
Of course, it's war between Russia and the West, not between Ukraine and Russia. But this is right time to stop this war for Putin because he is having upper hand. And when you are having upper hand, then stopping this war should happen. But Russia wants this, that the credit of stopping the war should go to its own friend, which is India. And if Donald Trump comes and stops the war, then the credit will go to the West and US. So it's right time for Putin to stop this war, and there would be a peace formula, would be in negotiation behind the door, and the peace formula will come up in Kazan during the BRICS summit. So if the war is stopped, it should stop by efforts of BRICS, not G7. And Russia wants this to happen.
This is exclusive on our, I would say we are the first ones probably making this exclusive that there's a potential for some sort of a ceasefire.
Before November, October is a crucial month for this ceasefire.
Wow, that's very, thank you for sharing that crucial information with us, Mr. Kaushik. And your last comments, Ms. Walyat.
I'll talk about more on the leverage that India have, over Russia and Brazil, because if we go by the statements of Russian officials, so they categorically very so they talked very clearly about I read out that the criminal spokesperson, they made a very clear remarks that PM Modi can lead these peace talks because PM Modi can get first-hand information from both Ukraine and the Russian counterparts, and the statement is very huge. Right, it's not, so we need to recognize how India is now establishing their footprints all across as a leader, and not just as a leader in Asia, but the global South also. And now with the expansion of this, we can talk, we can clearly say that how West is now, if we able to break this, peace agreement and everything. So definitely it will give leverage to India to great extent. And along with that, if we talk about the BRICS only, it will also balance out the power imbalance between China and India has in the global arena on the basis of soft power, and on the basis of how India basically on the maintaining the so-called neutral stance, how we can facilitate the peace in the world. Yeah.
Thank you.
Will be a great rather than rest of the countries, I would say.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and it will be very interesting to see what happens. But yeah, for the sake of the world, the earlier this war ends, the better it is. As Prime Minister Modi said, this is no era for war, and that that peace must come with dialogue and diplomacy. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.